Okay, so I think we should get started here a little bit.
Okay.
So last week we mentioned the context in which the pasuk "V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha" is written. Basically, there's a lot of negatives, a lot of "thou shalt not do." And at the end of that whole list, it's "V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha." You should love your friend as yourself. And many of the Mefarshim that we looked at said it means don't do all of these negative things and be a nice guy, because I cannot do a lot of negative things and not necessarily be a nice guy. I'm not stealing, I'm not lying, I'm not cheating, and I'm not giving you the time of day either. So the Torah tells me, be a nice fellow. Okay. And I had mentioned at the end that the Ba'al Shem Tov is talking about literally loving everybody. And we have this, what's this seemingly difficult question: how do you give a command on an emotion? Because v'ahavta is, I should love somebody. You want to tell me to be nice, okay. Or you want to at least tell me don't be negative. We see from the story with Hillel and the ger that came and said, teach me the whole Torah while I'm standing on one foot. And Hillel HaZaken says, what's hateful to you, don't do unto others. That's basically all that negativity, all those negative precepts or prohibitive precepts that it says in the Torah. So Lamaisa, he says to the ger, in actuality, don't be not nice. Don't do something that you don't want somebody to do to you. And we automatically derive from that if you're nice to somebody, it'll be nice back to you. Fine. Okay. But Ba'al Shem Tov is pushing that it means Ava, means that you should love the fellow. So as I mentioned pretty much in every class, to really go into all of the details would require much more time than we have. This is basically just an overview. So I'm just going to quote from a few places in the Rambam, which is used to back up the Ba'al Shem Tov's position. So the Rambam says there's a mitzvah on each individual. Le'ahoiv is called echad v'echad mi Yisrael kegufay, to love every single Jew as his own body, because there are many opinions that the word l're'acha is your friend, meaning somebody that's as religious as you are, somebody that's of the same Chassidic background, the same Yekisha background, the same Litvisha background, whatever it is, right? Somebody that looks like you, talks like you, acts like you, and if it's somebody other than that, then you don't have to have such a great Ahavas Yisrael towards them. As a matter of fact, there's a fascinating opinion that if you look in the Gemara in Sanhedrin, v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, quoted as barer loi misa yafa. The question of how somebody is supposed to get capital punishment, there's a discussion. Should it be done this way? Should it be done that way? So no, we need to do the nicest way possible, because v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. So they say Ahavas Yisrael just means choose the nicest way to kill the guy. Has nothing to do with being nice. Okay. the Rambam is saying you have to love every single individual kigufay, as your own self, as your own body, literally, as it says, v'afta l'reacha kamoicha. Therefore, says the Rambam, one needs to speak in a praiseworthy manner about the other person, to be careful about the other person's money, just like he's careful about his own funds, and just like he wants honor for himself. And if one derives honor on the cost of his friend, in other words, by degrading his friend, by creating problems for his friend, ein loy chelik lo'olam haba. He has no portion in the world to come. Very, very powerful statements. And this is Hilchos Deis, the halacha on character traits. It's the sixth parak, the sixth chapter, and now I'm going to do halacha daled. It says, loving the ger, the convert that comes under the wings of the Shekhin of God's divine presence, brings with it two positive mitzvahs. One is he's part of the group, he's part of the Re'im, and one is because he's a ger, a convert, and the Torah has a specific mitzvah, v'ahavtem es hager, you should love the convert. And the command on loving the convert is kemoi shetziva al havas shemoi, like the commandment about loving God. Shemoi literally means his name, but it means loving God, as it says, "Ve'ahavta es Hashem alekecha." You should love Hashem, your God. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself loves gerim, as it says, "V'oyev ger," love the ger. So far we see that there's definitely a concept of emotion involved over here. But now let's go over to Hilchos Yesodei HaTorah, the halachas of the foundations of the Torah. And this is the second chapter. That'll be halacha aleph and beis. Hashem, that's the honored, awesome God, there's a mitzvah to love him and revere him. As it says, v'ahavta es Hashem alekecha, you should love Hashem your God. And it says, as Hashem alekecha tira, that you should show reverence to God. It can't mean to be afraid of God, because there's a parallel to honoring parents and yira of parents. There's no mitzvah to be afraid of your parents. You look in Shulchan Aruch or in the Rambam, you show yira not by cowering in a corner. You show yira by not contradicting your parents. You show yira by not sitting in their chair, in their place, and so on and so forth. That's all a sign of respect. That's not a sign of fear. So the best way to translate yira in both cases is to revere or to respect. Then the Rambam says, what is the way to love and revere God? At the time when a person she is boinein, when he sits there and contemplates, thinks deeply about the actions of God, and it's not just God in a general abstract sense. It's his creator that's doing wondrous things. And he sees that God's understanding, God's running the world, is basically above and beyond human comprehension. I once more than once, pointed out people have stories that, for example, they were on a bus and the bus was late or the bus was early, and therefore such and such a thing worked out. Unbelievable hashgacha pratis. Somebody once came to me years ago and was telling me a story about they were on a bus, and I said to him, it's a very beautiful story, but I want you to understand there's 50 other people on the bus or 49 other people on the bus. They also all have stories as to why the bus was late. And the guy looks at me, he says, what? I said, yeah, the world doesn't revolve only around you. The world revolves around everybody. So everybody has a story. They may not realize the story at the moment, but everybody on that bus has a story because the bus was running late. So it's hard enough to wrap one's head around a single story, to figure out the connection of 50 people on a bus and all of the interactions with all of the people that these 50 people are interacting with is really very, very mind-blowing. And there's more than one bus in this world. So this is what the Rambam is saying. It's ein lo erech v'lo above and beyond the way we understand. But once we start thinking as to how great the Creator is and everything that He's doing for us, immediately, immediately a person has a love, he has a praise, he wants to beautify, and he has this great desire to know who's God. As David HaMelech says, my soul thirsts for God. It's like a person that's parched and desperately needs a drink. That's how a person wants to connect to Hashem. And that's as far as I want to go with what we have over here. And now I'm going to go into Sefer HaMitzvahs. That's not what I wanted to do. Okay. In Sefer HaMitzvahs, the Rambam is, for those that are keeping track, it's mitzvah, positive mitzvah 206. There's a mitzvah lehoiv zeh, mitzvah to love each other like we love ourselves. That is, that my mercy or my caring, my being empathetic and my love for somebody should be the same as I want people to love me and to be empathetic and caring for me. And anything that I don't want done to me, I shouldn't do to my friend. And the Rambam, when it comes to mitzvah number 3 about loving Hashem, he says the mitzvah is to contemplate and to think deeply into the mitzvahs that Hashem has commanded us and all of that which He does, which is explained that we need to look at the spiritual side, in other words, the mitzvahs. Plus, we have to look at the physical world and see the beauty and the grandeur of creation. And the Rambam here asks, how do I love Hashem? Like, in what manner should my love express itself? The answer is, like we say in Shema, these matters that I have commanded you today should be on your heart, because through the mitzvahs you will recognize He who said, and the world came into being. You need to understand that Hashem created the world. He's a creator, He's running it. So through this understanding, both of the physical world, the creation, the interaction between all the various parts of creation. You've got all these various cycles that interact with each other. You can ask anybody that's into any sort of ecology. They'll tell you that if you get rid of a bug, so that's going to create a problem someplace, somewhere in the total picture of ecology. Very true, because everything is all interrelated. At the same time, when a person sits and studies the Torah and sees the interaction of all of the mitzvahs and understands, as the Ba'al Shem Tov taught, that what does it mean the Torah is eternal? All mitzvahs are applicable to every Jew, every place, every time. I had the schus to speak at the Young Israel one Shalosh Rabbi Hellman was hoping that somebody else was supposed to be speaking, and they weren't able to come. And as he announced, otherwise I wouldn't say it, as he announced, as they were about to start Mincha, he says, "Could you please speak by Shalosh?" This was not Mincha Friday night either. This was Mincha Shabbos afternoon. So I told him, I said, I'll try. But what I did was show what the mitzvah of paraduma has to do with every individual on a daily basis, on a constant basis. So that's what it means that all of Torah is applicable in totality today. There's no such thing as something that doesn't have an application. And one expresses their love for Hashem by, according to what the Rambam is saying, is to make Hashem beloved to the world, like Avram Avinu. Avram Avinu explained to all of his guests, the people that were coming to his inn, to his hotel there, that, you should say thank you. And they go, yes, you're right. Thank you for the good food. Thank you for the lodging. He says, no. Not me. Thank God. God's the one that's enabling me to do all of this. And he makes Hashem beloved in the eyes of everybody. So that's showing a love to Hashem. There's a question that was asked by the Baal Tanya, by the first Lubavitcher Rebbe. What's greater, Avos Yisrael or Avos Hashem? Is loving Hashem greater, or is loving your fellow Jew greater? The Alter Rebbe thought, and he answered, loving your fellow Jew is greater. Why? Because since it says in the pasuk that Hashem loves us, by showing love to the one that's beloved, we're automatically showing love to the lover. So by being nice, by having Avos Yisrael, that shows that we have Avos Hashem, because we care about the one that Hashem loves. But I will show a little bit of an example of what it means, the eternity of Torah, and simultaneously explain why there's not necessarily a contradiction of all of those opinions that say that Avos Yisrael is just action, nothing to do with emotion. There's a mitzvah in Parshas Boy. It's listed by the Sefer HaChinuch, it's mitzvah 16. It says, don't break a bone of the Korban Pesach. It's an interesting halacha that you have to eat the meat of the Korban Pesach, but you're not allowed to break a bone to get the marrow out. You have to leave all the bones intact. And the Sefer HaChinuch explains that we are supposed to act in a dignified manner. And he says that we don't break the bones and chew them like a dog. We're supposed to, on the night of the Seder, supposed to act in a princely manner, in a royal manner. You don't have to sit there and act kiklovim. He says here, literally like dogs. We have to remember we're a mamleches kehanim v'goy kodesh. That we're a priestly nation and a holy nation. Matter of fact, that pasuk was said on the second day of Sivan, which is tonight. It's called Yom HaMeyuchas, when we were told what it means to be special and to be unique, where this Mamleches Kahanim, this kingdom of priests, the very Kodesh, a holy nation. And we have to show that we understand that we're supposed to go around in such a dignified manner, and we don't like break bones and eat it like a dog does. And then the Sefer HaChinuch continues. Parenthetically, the Sefer HaChinuch says he wrote the Sefer mainly for his teenage child and his child's friends, to give them something to do on the long Shabbos afternoons, so they would have something to learn, something to understand. So he brings down over here that pay attention and listen to what I want to teach you about the mitzvahs. Ki ha'adam nifal kefi pu'uloisav. A person is affected according to his actions. V'liboy v'chol machshavoisav, in his heart and all his thoughts, tamid achar masav, are always going according to his deeds that he's involved in, be it for the good or be it for the negative. Very powerful statement. And when you think about it, what the Sefer HaChinuch is saying is your actions bring about your feelings, not your feelings bring about your emotions. I have here a little called Handbook of Torah and Mental Health, written by Dr. Rosemarin and Rabbi Hamioff. I received this as a gift, and it's very, very fascinating. I'm just going to read a little piece from here. He quotes from the Sefer HaChinuch, and the authors write that most people believe that they behave in accordance with how they feel. However, in this famous excerpt, the Sefer HaChinuch teaches us that the opposite is also true. Counterintuitively, our thoughts and emotions are directly impacted by the way in which we behave. And then they go through a substantial body of clinical psychological science has highlighted this as a basic truth of human psychology. And then he quotes all of these non-svarim that I don't have in my library, because I kind of only have svarim in it. But he's showing that this is a very, very important concept, that the actions lead to the emotions. So even those commentators that are making statements that v'ahavta l'reacha kamoicha means actions, not necessarily contradicting what the Ba'al Shem Tov is saying, that it means emotions. Because how do you get to that emotion? It's through the actions. For me to say 1,000 times, I love you, and not do anything, doesn't work. You know, Baruch Hashem had the schus of kneading 15 cups of flour today in a dough, because it's a little bit hard for my wife to do. So if I said or I didn't say today, I love you, but I needed the dough, that's an expression. And the work itself is an expression of love. It's not to say that you shouldn't also say I love you, but I love you without an action is definitely not worth any. So we see from over here that as with the Simcha and with the Ashgacha Pratis, there's no contradiction. The Ba'al Shem Tov is just adding an additional dimension and stressing that the action should come and develop an emotion, just like we have the Rambam saying in regards to the mitzvah of Avos Hashem, that there is a mitzvah in regards to an emotion which comes about through contemplation. Obviously, we can't do something for God that he's missing. God's missing nothing. And the Pasuk in Eve says, God says, if you do a mitzvah, what have you actually given me? The Gemara says in regards to that Pasuk, person says, God, look, I put a mezuzah up on my door. I put a fence up around the roof. I'm keeping the mitzvahs. And God says, and who gave you the house? Right? Like, whatever it is that you're doing, who gave you in the first place that you should be, I put tzitzis on my four-cornered garment. Very nice. Who gave you the garment? So it's true. God enjoys. It says that reach nichoyach, God has an enjoyment that when we do his will, he has a time, he has an enjoyment, he has a simcha, but he doesn't have to have it. Avos Yisrael, on the other hand, if there's a poor person, he needs something to eat, give him something to eat. So he's missing something, you're filling it in. Makes a big difference. So that's what I wanted. So I said that I would give a story at the end. But before I give the story, I do want to thank Rabbi Hellman for this opportunity to show a little bit of Hakaras HaTov. I've been with the Young Israel on the Goyish calendar since 1955. Even predates Reb Zev Blechner. But not his brother, but that's when we moved into Brookline. And so I live on the other end of town now, but the Young Israel has been very, very hospitable when my wife was in the hospital. And I do want to thank them profusely for all of the kindness that they showed me over the years that I had to be at that end of town. So this is the story. And this actually is a story that has in it Simcha and Ashgacha Pratis and Avos Yisrael. So the story is with Reb Avram Yeshua Heschel of Apt, the Rebbe. Most of the story is found, it's printed, but I had the schus over the years to hear stories from Rebbes that had all sorts of additional interesting details. So the story goes like this. The Rebbe was visiting one of the villages that was either near Mezhebitz, where he was at the end, or near Yassi, where he was before. And he said to his Gabbai, who was one of his top Talmidim, says, in this village, there's the Oyer Shel Mashiach, the light of Mashiach. Something took place today. We need to find out what it is. There's this divine light that's coming from this village. And he sent his Gabbai to the end of the village, the edge of the village, to see what was doing over there. The Gabbai comes to there's a house, and he hears singing, looks in, and he sees two Yidden are singing, mamish, dancing, really unbelievable. So he knocks on the door. They're totally oblivious to everything. And so he invites himself in because he is assuming this is probably where the place is. And at one point they stop and they sit down. There's a bottle of mashka, shot glasses. They sit down and say, oh, another l'chaim. And they make another l'chaim. They get up and they start singing and dancing. So this Gabbai wants to know what's going on, and he's totally being ignored. So no, they're singing and dancing, so you might as well join. So he joins, and they invite him in. He's sitting, dancing and singing and dancing and singing and dancing. An hour goes by, and they're ready to sit down again. And he says, "Listen, Chevra, the Holy Apter Rebbe sent me to find out what's going on. You got to come and sit down with the Rebbe and explain what's happening." Okay, an excuse for another l'chaim. The Apter Rebbe wants to see us. Oh, a gewalt, wonderful, beautiful. Started singing and dancing a little bit more till the Gabbai finally is able to schlep him out of the house. They go see the Apter Rebbe. The Apter Rebbe came to the village. He was going to have a tish. He was going to have a get-together, a brang, a kumsitz, depends on where you're from, or depends on what you call it. So he turns to these two Yidden, and he says, so tell me your story over here. What was this big celebration? Okay, these two fellows, one was a water carrier, one was a wood chopper, necessary jobs to have in the village, but menial work, but necessary. That they really weren't excited about talking to this group of people. It's one thing to talk to the Rebbe privately, but this is already publicly. And the Rebbe said, listen, your story is very, very important for everybody to hear. You really need to tell the story. So they start telling the story that one's the water carrier, we'll call him Moishela. The other one is the wood chopper, we'll call him Yankel. And they're making I wouldn't say a gewaltic living, but okay, they're making a living. And they said 5 years ago, we decided we're going to pool our extra savings, and then we're going to go into the big town, when they have a market day, and see maybe we can do some business. So for 5 years, we've been saving and scrimping, and we're just putting it into one big container. And we decided the container is full. We're going to count out our money, and we're going to go to the big town and see what kind of business we can do in the marketplace. And they counted how much money they had before they left, so they would have some idea of what they could spend. They had 1,367, okay, allegedly it was ruble, but I don't think so because it wasn't in Russia, but whatever, zlotys. And they're on the way to the big town. Okay, fine, wonderful. They get to the marketplace and they realize they have no clue who's buying, who's selling, what to do. So they go off into a corner and they daven from the bottom of their hearts, Rabbi Shalom, we came here in good faith, and we realize we have no clue what's going on. So we're begging of you to please give us the greatest business deal that we could possibly get. Okay. After they're through davening, they're off in the corner in the marketplace. So they start wandering through the marketplace. They see there's two Yidden that are sitting in the marketplace having some sort of a heated discussion. Okay. Let's see what's going on with these two Yidden. So Maishala and Yankel go over and they say, what's happening? What's going on? So these two Yidden said, we have a big dilemma over here. I'm responsible for a orphan, a young gentleman, and my friend over here is responsible for a young orphan, a young lady. We made a shidduch, and we need to have 20,000 zlota. I raised 10,000 zlota, but my friend doesn't have his full 10,000 zlota. And we're making things bare bones, and we need to have 20,000 zlota, and we don't know what to do. How are we gonna make the wedding? The other guy says, I've done everything I could. I can't raise any more money, and I don't know what to do. And you need to understand that in those days there was no such thing as extravagant chasanas like we have, like we used to have before the corona. Now it's like back to normal, 20, 30 people. Fine, it's wonderful.
If that.
Huh?
If that.
If that, yeah. How many people are coming to Yaakov Yisrael's chasana? Oh, I thought my wife was here. Have a grandson.
Still getting married. It's okay.
Yeah,
still getting married.
Yeah. My grandson's getting married a few days after Shavuos in Eretz Yisrael. So my wife was speaking to my daughter this morning, and she said, really, that many? So I don't know, what the word that many is. My daughter's immediate family, meaning her children and grandchildren, is already over the the limits. So to figure out what they're doing. I thought my wife was here to let me know the number, but in Europe, my mother-in-law Shalom said what they would do is they would make a chasana. They would have what was called an Aramalites tish. It means they would have a festive meal for the poor people in town. They would put out a nice spread. Anybody that needed to come and partake would come and partake. The cost of being there was a bracha for the chos and kala. That was what was expected. No gifts, no nothing. Give a bracha to the chos and kala. And then there would be a suda, basically for the immediate family. And that's how things went. As a matter of fact, in some places in Europe, it still works that way. So whatever these two people that were collecting for the boy orphan and the girl orphan, could be that they needed to set them up with some housing or with a job or whatever it was, but this was bare bones. They couldn't get away with anything less. So Moshe and Yankel say to the fellow, how much money did you raise of the 10,000? And he says, I raised 8,633 zlotas. Oh, one second. Moshe and Yankel go off into a corner over there someplace, and they say, 1,367 will get this guy is 10,000. We daven from the bottom of our hearts that Hashem should give us the greatest business deal possible. What business deal do we have that's going to be greater than enabling this young lady and this young gentleman to get married? So they went over and gave 5 years worth of saving and scrimping to this fellow. So now they have 20,000 zlotys. And they said, thank you so much. You're the answer to our tefillos. You're the answer to our prayers that we wanted to have a great business deal. And you're obviously the answer for our tefillos. And give a mazel tov to the Chosim Kala. So these two gentlemen left. And Chaim, Moshel and Yankel decide, okay, we did our business deal. Geval, thank you so much for buying a shalayla. And we're going home. After all, we should celebrate. Made a gewaltige big deal. A great business deal. So we came home. This is all what they're telling to the Rebbe by the Tish. So we came home. Oh, a great business deal. We have to make a l'chaim. We have to celebrate. We made a little l'chaim and celebrate. So we started singing. We started dancing. And we went for a while, for a few hours. Then we sat down and said, you know, we should celebrate on behalf of the Chosin and Kala too. We made another l'chaim. We started singing and dancing. That's when your Gabbai came in. So he joined. Okay, fine, he joined. Very beautiful, very nice, very wonderful. So the Rebbe turned to the people that were there and said, let me fill you in on some of the missing details. This young Chosin and this young Kala became orphaned 5 years ago. There was a program in their village, in their city, whatever, and they were orphaned. They were young teenagers. And they wandered till they came to the place where these two Yidden were living. And one took in the boy and one took in the girl. They didn't know each other really, except for when they were traveling down the road, they had escaped. And so 5 years ago, this one went to the one fellow, the girl went to the other fellow. And then they became of marriageable age. These two Yidden decided that maybe we can make a shidduch. So the boy and the girl met each other for the purpose of a shidduch, and it went smoothly. So the Rebbe turns to Yankel and to Moshel, and he says, you realize that 5 years ago, you had an idea to make a business deal, and you started saving. The same time when these people needed somebody to start saving for them. And because you did this with such a simcha, and you did this with such an open heart, Hashem is going to reward you kefil keflayim. That means a square of a square. In other words, it's going to be squared and squared past that. But like many stories with the Apter Rebbe, we don't know what happened at the end of that. But if he said that they would get big, big brachas, I'm sure that they got big, big brachas because they were in such a state of simcha. And he said, as a final little note that 1,367 is not a random number. That's the gematria of Simchas Chosen V'Kala. And with that, the Rebbe told everybody that they should make a l'chaim and dance in honor of the Chosen Kala, because their dancing and their simcha will bring a very big bracha to these two Yisayimim, to these two orphans. So here we have a story of Ashkacha Pratis with what Simcha accomplishes, with what Ahavas Yisrael accomplishes. So if anybody has any questions, I'm able to answer. I'll be more than happy to do so.
I don't know what happened to these guys.
Yeah, well, there's certain Rebbes, Reb Moshe Leib Sassover, and the Apter Rebbe, Reb Avram Yehoshua Heschel of Apt. Those are two Rebbes that are very, very famous for their Ahavas Yisrael, and also pretty famous for the fact that you don't know all the details of the story, because what's important is what they did and not all the final details of the story. So unfortunately, I don't have an answer to that question, what happened to them. The Rebbe said that they would get a bracha kefil keflayim, and I'm sure that that's exactly what happened. How, what, where, when, this I don't know, but I'm sure that it happened.
Shia.
Okay, so I will wish everybody the traditional Chabad bracha. Everybody should be zeicha to Kabbalas HaTorah b'simcha b'pnimiyus. People should be zeicha to receive the Torah with a simcha, with a true joy. And b'pnimiyus means on the inside, that it should permeate the inside and from the inside to the outside. And thank everybody. I want to thank everybody for participating over these few weeks. And in Yitzhak Hashem, we should meet each other on Simchadik occasions. Good night.